Hi, thanks for being here. This is one of those stories that still feels unreal even when you lived it. I'm going to tell it exactly the way it happened, because if I soften it, it sounds like a made-up drama. And it wasn't. It was just my family doing what my family always does when they think no one will stop them. My parents sold my 11-year-old daughter's antique cello. Not just any cello. The cello my grandmother left specifically for her. The one my daughter practiced on like it was a part of her body. The one that had been appraised at $87,000. And then they used the money to build a pool. Not for my daughter. Not for the whole family. For my sister's kids. I knew something was off before we even got inside the house. You can smell a renovation the same way you can smell a lie. Fresh paint, sawdust, and that sharp chemical tang that tells you money has been spent quietly. The kind of spending that comes with secrets. My daughter, Harper, climbed out of the car with her backpack, her music binder, and her rosin tin. She was practically glowing, because the important part of her day was already happening in her head. The actual cello was kept at my parents' place, in my grandma's old music room. I didn't realize yet that I was already using the past tense without knowing it. Harper had been excited all day. Not in a chore kind of way. In a this is mine kind of way. She'd been humming under her breath on the drive, tapping rhythms on her knees, halfway in that focused little world she disappears into when she plays. "Do you think Great Nana will be there today?" she asked, tightening her ponytail like she could control the universe with a hair tie. "She's at her place," I told her. "Not today. We'll call her later." Harper nodded, but her eyes stayed hopeful anyway. Like maybe my grandma had changed her mind overnight and came back to the house because she missed the familiar smell of my dad's cologne and my mom's passive-aggressive sighing. We walked up to the front door. I had a key. Not because I'm especially trusted. But because I'm useful. There's a difference. One gets you love. The other gets you access codes and errands. The second I opened the door, I heard it. A muffled whine of power tools somewhere in the back. And the smell was stronger now, definitely paint. Definitely money. Harper's face lit up. "Are they fixing the music room?" she asked. I didn't answer right away because my brain was doing that slow buffering thing it does when reality doesn't match the script. We stepped inside. A tarp covered the hallway runner like the house was preparing for surgery. Cardboard boxes lined the wall. Blue painter's tape was everywhere, which is basically a polite way of saying do not touch anything, you don't matter. Harper tiptoed like she was in a museum. "Mom," I called out, loud enough to reach whatever part of the house my mother was currently ruling from. No answer. Harper headed toward the back window. "Whoa," she said. I followed her gaze and felt my stomach drop so hard it was like my body forgot where my feet were. The backyard looked torn open. A huge rectangle had been carved out where the grass used to be. Dirt piles sat like small mountains. There were forms along the edges, rebar, stacks of pavers. It wasn't finished, but it was unmistakable. A pool. A full in-ground pool. Because why quietly improve your life when you can broadcast it to the neighborhood with heavy machinery? Harper blinked, eyes wide. "Is that for us?" she asked. There was so much hope in her voice that I actually hated everyone I was related to in that moment. "I don't know," I said carefully. "Let's go get your cello." We walked down the hall toward the music room, which had always been my grandma's space. Even when she lived there, the room belonged to her the way a lighthouse belongs to the coast. She had turned it into a sanctuary. Temperature controlled. Humidifier quietly humming. Shelves of old sheet music. A cabinet with a lock, because my grandma wasn't born yesterday. Harper loved that room. She said it smelled like polish and peppermint tea. I said it smelled like someone who still believed in boundaries. I pushed open the door. The humidifier was still running. The stand was still there. The chair was still in the corner. But the spot where the cello case always rested was empty. Not moved. Not tucked away. Not relocated. Empty. Harper didn't scream. She didn't even inhale. She just froze. Then she walked over slowly, like she was approaching an animal that might bite. She looked down at the bare patch of carpet. Looked up at the shelf. Looked behind the chair like maybe it had fallen and nobody noticed for days. Then she turned to me. "Did Great Nana change her mind?" she asked. Her voice was small and careful, like the question itself might get her in trouble. My throat tightened. "No, sweetheart," I said. Harper swallowed. "Then where is it?" She didn't sound angry. That would have been easier. She sounded careful, like she was trying not to break anything else. Her fingers drifted toward the stand, like she expected to feel the cello there. Wood. Wait. Something real. But there was nothing. She pulled her hand back fast, like she'd touched a hot stove. Her eyes got glossy, but she didn't let anything fall. She nodded once, too hard, like she was forcing the moment to behave. I didn't answer because I didn't know yet. Not for sure. But I could feel where this was heading, and I hated that my kid was standing in the middle of it. I told Harper to stay in the room for a second. I needed her not to see my face when I found out. I marched toward the kitchen. My mom was there, of course. She was always in the kitchen when she wanted to look like she was holding the family together with her bare hands. She had a mug in one hand and her phone in the other. Hair pulled back like she'd been busy, which in my family usually means busy ignoring something. My dad sat at the table scrolling on his tablet, calm as a man who believes the world will always make room for him. My sister, Megan, was perched on a stool sipping something green and expensive looking. She didn't look up when I walked in. She barely ever did. "Where's Harper's cello?" I asked. My mom blinked slowly like she couldn't believe I'd bring up something inconvenient during her morning coffee. "Good morning to you too, Claire," she said. I stared at her. My dad sighed. "What's the problem now?" I could feel my heart doing that annoying thing where it tries to climb out of my chest and find a quieter family. "Harper's cello," I repeated. "Where is it?" Megan snorted without looking up. "Oh my God." My mom took a sip of coffee. "Your father handled it." "Handled it." That phrase is a red flag printed in cursive. "Handled it how?" I said. My dad finally looked up. "We sold it." The room went strangely quiet, like the house itself wanted to hear what happened next. I blinked. "You sold it?" "Yes," my dad said, like he was explaining taxes. "It was valuable. It was sitting there. Your grandmother wasn't even using it." "It wasn't hers," I said. "It was Harper's." Megan laughed. "She's 11. My mom set her mug down with a soft clink. "Claire, don't start." "Don't start," I repeated. "You sold my daughter's cello." My dad leaned back. "It was a family asset." "No," I said, voice sharper now. "It was set aside for Harper." Grandma was clear. Megan finally looked up, eyes bright with annoyance. "And my kids are what, chopped liver?" Her kids weren't even in the room and somehow they were still the main characters. My mom waved a hand toward the backyard. "We're doing something nice for the children." "The children," I repeated. "Ben and Ava deserve space," my mom said. "And Harper doesn't?" I asked. My dad rubbed his forehead, already tired of me being a person. "Harper will be fine with a student cello. You can rent one. Plenty of kids do. Harper will be fine." That was my family's favorite prayer. It meant we did what we wanted and were not dealing with your feelings. I could feel my hands shaking. I forced them still on the counter. "Where is it?" I asked quieter now. "Who did you sell it to?" My dad shrugged. I turned back toward the hall. Harper was still in the music room, standing in the empty corner like she was waiting for someone to tell her she mattered. I walked back to her, knelt, and took her hands. "We're going home," I said. Harper nodded without arguing. That was the worst part. She didn't even fight. She just folded like she'd been trained for this. As we left, my mom called after me. "Claire, do not call your grandmother. Do you hear me?" I didn't answer because I did hear her. I just didn't care anymore. That night, Harper practiced on the battered student cello her teacher kept for emergencies. It sounded like a cardboard box with strings. Harper didn't complain. She adjusted her posture like she always did, focused, tried again, and every time the sound came out thin and wrong, she blinked hard like she was trying to hold something inside. I stood in the doorway pretending I was just casually watching, like this was normal. Like my kid hadn't just been robbed. Harper finally stopped and set the bow down. "I can still practice," she said carefully. "It's just harder." "I know," I said. She nodded and stared at her hands. Maybe Great Nana didn't mean for it to be mine yet. Something inside me went very still. Harper had spent weeks in that music room with my grandmother, her great-grandmother, learning in a way I couldn't give her. Not because I didn't love her. Love doesn't automatically come with talent. My grandma had it. Harper had it too. It skipped me like the universe looked at our family and said, let's not put all the gifts in one basket. My grandma used to sit beside Harper and correct her grip with 2 fingers and a look. She'd say things like, your left hand is talking too loudly. Harper would giggle and fix it anyway. She praised Harper the way kids need praising. Specific and honest. Better. That was better. Not the empty kind. Not the kind that says good job while still checking your phone. Harper felt seen with her in a house where she usually had to shrink because that was the pattern. In my parents' house, Megan's kids could shout, spill juice, run through hallways like tiny kings and queens. And it was adorable. It was kids being kids. They're so spirited. Megan and her husband had been living there too. One of those temporary situations that lasted long enough to grow roots. Harper was expected to be quiet, polite, grateful. If Harper laughed too loud, my mom would say inside voice, sweetheart, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. If Ben yelled, my dad would laugh and say he's got lungs on him. If Ava demanded attention, Megan would scoop her up like she was a celebrity. If Harper needed anything at all, it was treated like an inconvenience. Harper learned to take up less space the way other kids learn math. My grandma noticed. She didn't always intervene. She was still my mom's mom, and family politics are its own kind of landmine. But my grandma did something quieter. She carved out a space where Harper didn't have to apologize for existing. That space was the music room. And now it had been emptied like it never mattered. It made practical sense too. My apartment wasn't designed for antique instruments and long practice sessions. It was safe and clean and mine, but small. Sound traveled. Neighbors complained. And a cello like my grandma's, now Harper's, wasn't something you left near a radiator and hoped for the best. So we stored it at my parents' house, in the controlled room, in the cabinet, with the humidifier humming like a promise. And my grandma had been careful. Not just emotionally careful. Paperwork careful. She'd had the cello appraised, photographed, documented. She'd shown me the file once, not because she wanted to brag, but because she wanted me to understand. This is not just sentimental, she told me, tapping the page. It's valuable. People get strange around valuable things. I nodded because yes, people get strange around valuable things. I just didn't think people meant my parents. My grandma had moved out less than a week earlier into a place my mom described as perfect and safer and less stress. That might have been true for my grandma. It was definitely true for my mom, because the move had been preceded by months of comments like "this is getting hard, she needs professional care, it's not fair to all of us." All of us meaning my mom, my dad, Megan, and somehow never me. The one who actually showed up. My grandma didn't leave kicking and screaming. She left the way she did everything. Straight spine, quiet decision. But once she was gone, the energy in the house shifted. The last set of eyes that mattered had left the room. And my family did what they always did when no one could stop them. They took. Harper went to bed early that night. She didn't ask to call my grandma. She didn't ask to complain. She hugged me tightly before she fell asleep like she was holding herself together with my ribs. After she was asleep, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at my phone. I kept thinking about the way my mom said do not tell your grandmother. Not don't upset her. Don't tell her. Like the truth was a weapon and they expected me to keep it holstered for their comfort. I realized something then and it wasn't pretty. I'd spent most of my life trying not to be difficult. I thought being easy was the same as being loved. It isn't. It's just easier for everyone else. And I wasn't going to teach Harper that lesson. So the next morning, I drove to my grandma's place. She lived in a bright, tidy apartment in an assisted living community outside Columbus, Ohio. The building smelled like lemon cleaner and expensive hand soap. It wasn't depressing. It was controlled. There's a difference. The staff at the front desk smiled and asked who I was visiting like my family hadn't just detonated itself. "Margaret," I said. "Oh," she said warmly. "She's in the lounge. She's been expecting you." Of course she had. My grandma sat in an armchair with a book in her lap, glasses perched on the end of her nose like she was about to judge the author personally. She looked up the second I walked in. "Sit," she said. "Your face is doing that thing." I sat across from her. "They did it," I said. My grandma didn't flinch. She just waited. So I told her. Simple. The missing cello. The pool excavation. The words my parents used. Family asset. Harper will be fine. Don't tell grandma. My grandma listened without interrupting, the way people do when they're collecting evidence. When I finished, she closed her book slowly. "And Harper?" she asked. "She went quiet," I said. "She asked if you changed your mind." My grandma's expression didn't crumble. It hardened. Not into rage. Into clarity. "She thought it was her fault," my grandma said softly. I nodded. My grandma exhaled through her nose. One sharp breath. Then she asked, "When did you last see the file?" "What file?" I asked. "The cello documentation," she said. "Appraisal, photographs, identifiers." "Months ago," I said. "You showed me." My grandma nodded. "Good." Then she leaned forward. "Claire, do you have any texts about the pool? Any pictures? Anything that shows renovation started right after I moved?" "I can screenshot Megan's posts," I said, because of course Megan had posted. Megan could post her own funeral if the lighting was good. My grandma nodded. "Do that." I stared at her. "Grandma, are you okay?" My grandma looked at me over her glasses. "I am not the one you should be worried about," she said. Then she reached for her phone. "I'm going to make a call." I didn't ask who she was calling. My grandma had always kept her cards close. My family treated that as sweet and old-fashioned. It wasn't. It was strategic. She made the call, spoke quietly, then hung up. "I will handle it," she said. I blinked. "How?" My grandma gave me a small smile. "Not warm. Not cruel. Just certain. Not with yelling," she said. Then she reached across and squeezed my hand. "Harper is going to get her cello back. My throat tightened. How do you know? Harper adjusted anyway because Harper was the kind of kid who adapted even when she shouldn't have to. The worst part was that she didn't complain. She just got quieter. Meanwhile, my parents posted pool updates like they personally invented concrete. Megan posted Ava holding a tiny inflatable unicorn. Ben wearing goggles. Captions like making memories and worth every penny. No apology. No mention of the cello. Just smiling faces and a giant hole in the ground. Then the invite came. Not to me personally. It landed in a family group chat like a flyer taped to a pole. Barbecue Saturday 2 p.m. pool reveal, bring a side if you're coming. No please. No hope you can make it. Just logistics. In my family, feelings are optional but potato salad is mandatory. I stared at the screen. Harper peeked over my shoulder. Her face stayed blank. Are we going? She asked. I opened my mouth and didn't have an answer yet. The next morning, my grandma called me. We're going, she said. I swallowed. Grandma, what are you doing? Her voice was calm. I'm doing what I should have done earlier. I started to ask more, but she cut me off. Claire, she said, I don't want Harper watching you swallow this. My chest tightened. Okay, I said. There was a pause. Then she said it's in motion. In motion, I repeated. The cello, she said. My heart kicked. What do you mean? She didn't explain. She didn't need to. You will find out soon enough, she said. Saturday was hot in that heavy, sticky way that makes you feel like you're breathing through a wet towel. Perfect pool weather. Harper wore her swimsuit under her clothes because she's 11 and Hope is stubborn. She didn't talk much on the drive. Neither did I. When we pulled up, cars lined the street. Aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors. The kind of crowd my family loves because it makes them feel important. The backyard looked like a brochure. Blue water shimmering under the sun. New stone deck. Pergola with string lights like they watched one home improvement show and decided they were experts. Ben was already in the pool splashing like a tiny shark. Ava sat on a float wearing sunglasses because of course she did. Megan held a drink and laughed loudly like she was hosting a talk show. My mom stood near the grill with that I am the matriarch posture. My dad hovered nearby, smiling like a man whose life choices had just been validated by chlorine. And then Harper and I walked in. My mom's smile flickered. Just a little. Not because she was surprised we came. Because she was irritated we had the audacity. Claire, she said bright and fake. You made it. Hi, Mom, I said. Megan looked Harper up and down. Hey. Harper nodded politely, quiet like she'd been trained. Ben cannonballed. Everyone laughed. Ava squealed. Megan beamed. Harper stood beside me with her towel folded neatly in her hands like she didn't know where to put herself. I watched her eyes drift over the pool, the pergola, the loungers, the shiny new life built out of what used to be hers. Harper swallowed hard. I put my hand on her shoulder. She leaned into it without looking at me. That's when I knew I wasn't there for revenge. I was there because my kid deserved to see what happens when you don't let people take from you and then demand gratitude. My dad clapped his hands. All right everyone, food's almost ready. My mom laughed. And before we eat, we just want to say this has been a long time coming. We're so happy to finally have a backyard the kids can really enjoy. Applause. Megan raised her glass. To family, she said. More applause. Harper's fingers tightened around her towel. Then someone asked where's Margaret? Isn't she coming? My mom's smile tightened. She's busy, she said quickly. Right on cue, the gate clicked. I turned. My grandma walked in. She wasn't in a wheelchair. She didn't look fragile. She wore a crisp blouse and slacks and a calm expression that made the air feel colder even in the heat. Beside her was a man in a suit holding a slim folder. The backyard went quiet in that way crowds do when they sense a shift but don't know what kind yet. My mom's face went pale. My dad's smile froze. Megan's mouth opened slightly, then closed. My grandma stepped forward, eyes sweeping over the pool like she was assessing a poorly done paint job. "Well," she said pleasantly, "you've been busy." My mom forced a laugh. "Mom, this is a party." "I know," my grandma said. "That's why I came." She looked at me, then at Harper. Harper straightened like her spine recognized safety. My grandma's gaze softened for a heartbeat. Then she looked back at my parents. "I heard you sold the cello," my grandma said. My mom's lips pressed together. "We didn't want to upset you." My grandma lifted a hand. "You didn't want consequences." The words hit like a stone dropped into water. My dad cleared his throat. "Let's talk about this privately." My grandma smiled, and it was not warm. "Oh, Gary," she said. "You've had plenty of private time." A nervous chuckle rippled through the crowd. Someone shifted their drink from one hand to the other. Someone else suddenly became very interested in the grill. My grandma turned slightly, addressing the backyard like a town meeting. "I won't keep you long," she said. "I know you're here to swim." Megan snapped. "This is insane." My grandma didn't look at her. She looked straight at my parents and said calmly, "The cello was held in trust for Harper." Silence. The kind of silence that feels sharp. My mom blinked. "What?" My grandma continued, voice even. "I am the trustee. Harper is the beneficiary. That cello was not a family asset. It was not yours to sell." My dad stared at her like she'd started speaking another language. Megan's face flushed. "You can't." My grandma's eyes flicked to Megan. "I can." The man beside her stepped forward and opened the folder. My grandma didn't look at him. She didn't need to. "I documented that instrument," she said. "Appraisal, photographs, serial identifiers, insurance. The works. Because I've been alive a long time and I've met people." She paused. "Apparently I'm related to some of them." A couple people snorted. Dry humor does that. It slips under the skin while everyone is still deciding if they're allowed to laugh. My mom's voice shook. "We didn't know anything about a trust." My grandma nodded. "Correct. You didn't." My dad finally found his voice. "Where is it?" My grandma's smile returned. "Safe." Harper's head snapped up. My grandma looked at her. "It was recovered this morning," she said, after a report was filed. Harper made a tiny sound, not a sob, just relief trying to escape. My grandma turned back to my parents. "You sold something you did not own," she said. "You took the money and you put it into this." She gestured at the pool like it was a bad decision in physical form. Megan snapped. "It's for the kids." My grandma's gaze sharpened. "Harper is a kid." Megan's mouth opened, then closed. She glanced at Ben and Ava splashing like she wanted them to be a shield. They weren't. The lawyer cleared his throat gently and stepped forward. "I have documents for you," he said calmly. My mom took a step back. "No." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He held the papers out like a waiter offering a check nobody wants to see. "Notice to vacate," he said. 60 days. My mom stared at the papers like they were poisonous. My dad's face went from pale to gray. Megan's voice went high. "You're kicking us out." My grandma tilted her head. "You're acting surprised. That's the part one don't understand. My mom's hands shook. Mom, you can't do this. I let out a sharp laugh. She was getting a cello. My grandma stepped toward Harper. Sweetheart, she said gently, you didn't lose it. It was taken. Harper's lip trembled. I thought I did something wrong. My grandma's eyes flashed with anger so quick it was almost invisible. You did nothing wrong. The lawyer held the papers steady. My dad didn't take them. My mom didn't take them. Megan finally snatched hers like she could rip reality in half if she tore hard enough. My grandma looked at my parents. 60 days, she said again. You will leave. My dad's voice came out thin. You can't be serious. My grandma's smile was small and cold. Try me. And that was it. No screaming. No meltdown. Just a line drawn in permanent ink. As the party collapsed, people quietly gathering their things, kids being called out of the pool, relatives avoiding eye contact, my mom stood frozen. Megan's face was red. She hissed something at my dad. My dad didn't respond. Ben and Ava kept splashing for a few more minutes because kids don't understand consequences until adults force them to. Harper watched them, then looked at my grandma. Do I get it back? She whispered. My grandma nodded. Yes. Harper let out a breath she'd been holding for 6 weeks. And I realized something. My parents' faces went pale because my grandma had finally done the one thing my family couldn't survive. She stopped letting them pretend. Harper got her cello back. It arrived the next day in a hard case that looked like it had traveled through several hands and regretted all of them. My grandma opened it with Harper like it was a ceremony. Harper ran her fingers over the wood like she was touching something alive. She didn't say much. She just hugged my grandma so tightly that my grandma closed her eyes for a second, like she finally let herself feel it now that the danger had passed. My parents learned a fun fact about selling something you don't own. People want their money back. The buyer came after them exactly how you'd expect. Angry, embarrassed, and not interested in my mom's we didn't know routine. Repayment plan became a new phrase in my parents' vocabulary like a disease. They couldn't pay it all at once. Most people can't, especially not people who pour stolen money into concrete and chlorine. 60 days went faster than they expected. My mom tried bargaining. My dad tried guilt. Megan tried rage. My grandma didn't move. They packed up their life in a house they treated like it belonged to them and moved into something smaller, cheaper, and without a pool. Megan and her husband didn't save my parents. Not because they couldn't. Because they wouldn't. Megan suddenly remembered how to distance herself when consequences showed up. One minute it was we all agreed. The next minute it was I told you this was a bad idea. Families like mine have a special talent for rewriting history on the fly. Ben and Ava adjusted. Kids always do. Harper adjusted too, but differently. She started speaking up more. Small things at first. Actually, I was sitting there. I don't like that joke. No, I'm not okay with that. The first time she did it in front of my mom's mouth tightened like she tasted something bitter. Good. My grandma updated her plans after everything happened. Quietly. Thoroughly. The way she does. She didn't give speeches about it. One evening she slid a folder across my kitchen table and said Andrew is handling the paperwork. I'm putting the house into a trust. I'll be the trustee. You'll be the beneficiary. It's protected now and it's yours in the end. I stared at her. Grandma, I said, you don't have to. Yes, I do, she said. Because I've seen what happens when I don't. The day my parents moved out, Harper and I packed up our apartment. No ceremony. Just boxes, keys, and a house that finally felt like it could breathe. The first night we slept there, the house sounded different. No construction noise. No performative laughter. No heavy footsteps pacing like ownership. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that feels earned. Then my grandma moved back in, this time for real. Not as someone being taken care of. Not as an inconvenience managed in a spare room. As the person who belonged there. Harper helped her unpack like it was a celebration. She carried sweaters and books and that little tin of peppermint tea like each one was a vote for the future. And then, like it was the most natural thing in the world, my grandma sat in the living room while Harper practiced. No shrine of silence. No tight smiles. No inside voice, sweetheart. Just music filling a house that finally knew who it was for. When spring came, Harper auditioned for the regional youth orchestra. She got in. But this time she had her instrument and something else too. Proof. Proof that when someone tried to take her future and build a pool with it, the adults who mattered didn't tell her to swallow it. They showed up. They told the truth. They made sure she never had to apologize for wanting a place at the table. So what do you think? Did my grandma go too far? Or not far enough? Let me know.